The man standing outside the glass conference room looked tired. His coat was old, his shoes were worn, and the leather folder in his hand had clearly been repaired more than once. The people inside the room took one look at him and decided exactly who they thought he was. Then one of them laughed and said, "Nice shoes, Chairman." Everyone joined in. A few minutes later, the room fell completely silent when the chairman of the board stood up, smiled at the man, and said, "Welcome back, Mr. Chairman. We've been waiting for you." What happened next changed every life in that building. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Stories like this remind us that kindness can change lives, and your support helps us share more inspiring stories with people all around the world. Michael Turner was 42 years old and the father of an 8-year-old daughter named Lily. 3 years earlier, his wife had passed away after a long illness, leaving him to raise their little girl alone. Life had not been easy since then. Michael worked several jobs. During the day, he repaired machinery in small factories. At night, he delivered food. Every dollar he earned went toward rent, school supplies, food, and Lily's future. Even though life was difficult, Michael never complained. Every morning, he prepared Lily's breakfast, braided her hair the best he could, and walked her to school. One day, he always told her, "Things will get better." One cold Monday morning, Michael received an unexpected phone call. A large company called Ashford Technologies wanted him to attend an interview. Michael was surprised. Years ago, before tragedy had struck his family, he had worked as an engineer and had helped design several important systems for the company. But after leaving to care for his wife, he had disappeared from the business world. Now, someone wanted to speak with him again. Michael borrowed a clean jacket from a friend and carefully polished his old shoes. They still looked worn, but they were the best pair he owned. As he prepared to leave, Lily hugged him tightly. "You're going to do great, Dad." Michael smiled. "Thank you, sweetheart." When he arrived at the company's headquarters, he was amazed by the enormous glass building rising into the sky. Employees in expensive suits hurried through the lobby while security guards stood near the entrance. As Michael entered the boardroom, several executives looked up. One of them immediately frowned. Another whispered something to the man sitting beside him. A tall executive named Richard leaned back in his chair and stared at Michael's shoes. "Those are interesting shoes," he said with a smirk. Several people laughed quietly. Richard pointed toward a chair. "You must be here for the maintenance position." Michael shook his head politely. "I was invited for an interview." Richard smiled sarcastically. "Of course you were." A woman sitting near the window looked uncomfortable as the laughter continued. Her name was Sarah, and she was the youngest member of the board. Unlike the others, she noticed the exhaustion in Michael's eyes and the careful way he carried himself. She stood up and offered him a cup of coffee. "Please have a seat," she said kindly. Michael thanked her. Richard chuckled again. "Nice shoes, Chairman." This time, everyone laughed loudly. Everyone except Sarah. Michael simply smiled. Years of hardship had taught him patience. Just then, the door opened. An elderly man entered the room. Every executive immediately stood up. It was Edward Ashford, the founder of the company. His eyes settled on Michael, and his face lit up with joy. He walked quickly across the room and held out his hand. "Welcome back, Mr. Chairman. We've been waiting for you." The room became completely silent. Richard's smile disappeared. Sarah stared in disbelief. Edward turned toward the others. "Allow me to introduce the man who helped build this company." Confused expressions spread throughout the room. Edward continued speaking. 20 years ago, when this company was struggling, Michael invested nearly everything he had. He developed some of our most successful technologies and refused to take credit for his work. Michael looked down quietly. Edward smiled. Then, when his wife became ill, he stepped away from everything to take care of her. He never asked anyone for help. One executive finally found the courage to speak. But why is he here? Edward looked directly at Michael. Because I am retiring, and years ago I promised that one day this company would belong to him. No one spoke. The same people who had laughed at Michael only moments earlier now lowered their heads in embarrassment. Richard cleared his throat. I had no idea. Michael nodded. I know. Sarah smiled softly. That's why we should always treat people with respect. Edward laughed gently. Exactly. Later that afternoon, Michael walked through the company with Edward, meeting employees from every department. Unlike many executives, he stopped to learn everyone's names. He spoke to receptionists, cleaners, security guards, and assistants. He listened to their stories. He thanked them for their hard work. Word quickly spread throughout the building that the company's new chairman had once struggled exactly as many of them had. The following morning, Michael introduced several changes. He increased support for employees facing family emergencies. He created scholarships for workers' children. He established a fund to help employees experiencing financial difficulties. When reporters asked him why he was making these changes, Michael smiled. I know what it feels like to be invisible. I know what it feels like to worry about tomorrow. No one should have to carry those burdens alone. That evening, Michael returned home. Lily ran toward him as soon as he opened the door. How did the interview go? She asked excitedly. Michael knelt and hugged her tightly. It went very well. She smiled. I told you. Michael looked around their tiny apartment and realized that, for the first time in many years, hope felt stronger than fear. Several weeks later, Richard approached Michael's office. I want to apologize, he said quietly. I judged you without knowing your story. Michael stood up and shook his hand. We all make mistakes. The important thing is what we learn from them. As Richard left, he noticed a framed photograph on Michael's desk. It showed Michael, his wife, and little Lily smiling together. Under the picture were a few simple words. Be kind. Everyone is fighting a battle you cannot see. And perhaps that is the lesson we all need to remember. Kindness costs nothing, yet it can change a life forever. A smile, a helping hand, or a few encouraging words can become a light in someone's darkest moment. The people in that boardroom learned that wealth is not measured by expensive clothes, polished shoes, or impressive titles. True wealth is found in compassion, humility, and love. So the next time you meet someone, choose kindness. You never know who they are. And more importantly, you never know what they have been through.